Hey, what's up? This is Brad from Be Real. Hey, I'm super excited today about my guest. I've known him for several years. I've had some other people on here, like my wife, my 13-year-old, but I don't know, they all right. But I'm not as excited about my friend today. So I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to introduce him, okay? And I've been practicing on this. Hailing from Oklahoma City, born in Pryor, America. He's married to the strongest, most amazing woman, Allie. She's on fire for God. He has 3 children, 3 boys, 2 girls, graduated from Southern Nazarene University. He's a speaker. He's an author. And he is the founder of Hope is Alive. You know what? We were just sitting here talking through all of his pains and all of his struggles and all of his life lessons. He is now the hope dealer. The hope dealer. We're going to get into that more in just a little bit. Clap your hands. Give us some love for my good friend Lance Lang.
Hey, I love that intro. I think you gave me one more kid than I have, though.
You don't have 4?
No, I have 4. I think you said 5.
Oh, no, it's
But
3 boys and a girl. No,
4,
I could be wrong.
4 is plenty. 2 babies is more than enough, and I am so stoked to be here. Thank you for that
I
lovely
kind of did that
introduction.
intro to make you comfortable. I really did it, too, to psych myself up just a little bit. So,
I love
before
it.
I get, I always say this. Before I get started, let me say something, which ends up I do most of the talking. No, not really. So let me tell you why I'm so blessed and I'm so thankful that Lance is here. Let me kind of tell you how this just happened just a little bit. So when I was going through my transition, my professional transition, I got back to Tulsa, and I'm telling you, 1 or 2 different friends said, hey, Brad, you're going to do the social media, you're going to do a podcast. You really should reach out to Lance. You really should talk to Lance. Lance is doing some great things. He's got a lot of the same thinking that you do. I was like, yeah, Lance and I have done some things in the past, but I hate bugging him. So my mother-in-law said the same thing. I told her the same thing. I really hate, my mother-in-law, Loretta, love her. She don't mind bugging nobody, bro. So she ended up calling somebody that knew Lance or his assistant. I don't know how the whole deal happened. All of a sudden I get this call and it says, hey, Lance said you could use some help. Mm-hmm. What can you do? And so I'm just telling you, sometimes when you're in certain places, in my opinion, I feel like just sometimes, God kind of pushes his face through the clouds. Says, I got this, man. We got this deal. So I kind of explained to her, I'd love to get more involved with Hope is Alive. And, man, if he could come on my podcast, that would be amazing. It'd be a huge blessing, right? So out of nowhere, I get a call, and she says, hey, he's willing to come on your podcast. There's a couple of dates he can do it. So he's here. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, man, I love you, bro.
I love you, too.
I'm in your corner, man.
Thank
You've
you.
been in my corner. I'm in your corner, and I love a comeback story, even when we're not expecting to have to walk through a comeback story.
Yeah.
But I know that's been my journey as well, and a lot of people said yes to me and have said yes. And, man, you were one of those guys who believed in what we were doing, and anything you need, man, I'm here for it.
Thank
you. Like we talked about, our stories have power. Our stories are our secret weapon. I love to say that. And so anytime that we can, use the platform that God's given us to tell that story of hope, to tell that second chance story, I know I've seen it enough. It will impact lives. God will use it beyond anything we could imagine, anything that we could do.
Yeah.
And lives will be changed because of it. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm open to anything you got for me. Let's go.
Well, I think that too. I run through a lot of similar things that you have, and I'm just my thinking was that I didn't necessarily go through these things. God is undefeated in my life; He's never been defeated. But I feel like I've gone through those things in my life, not maybe to necessarily strengthen me. I feel like I was a pretty strong person. But I do feel like as I got to the other side of those things that He got me through those things because He knew I would drop back and help people.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
He knew that I would be a good steward of that experience. And like you and I were talking before the cameras came on, I have to go tell people what's happened. And when I have told people what has happened, throughout my whole life, it kind of builds a bridge into where they are.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
that's
saying?
right.
And And then two, it also has put me in a situation where I mean, it has happened hundreds of times where people pulled the chair up to my desk and go, "Hey, boss, man, you're not gonna believe this, man. So let me tell you what just happened." I'm like, "Okay, why don't you tell me, and then I'm gonna tell you a little something about me,
That's right.
and we'll see." And they're like, "Oh man, I'm glad, I'm
Yeah.
glad." But it gives you. I learned this recently. It's experiential knowledge. There's one thing about reading a book and going to try to teach somebody something you've read out of a book, but if you've learned that through life experiences, there just seems to be some energy
That's
and
right.
weight
Yeah.
in that,
Man, that's for sure. I mean, I've walked through so many things like you have, and God's used every one of those valleys, every one of those pain points, every one of those challenging, shameful, guilt-ridden situations. He's used it for good when we're willing, right? When we're willing to step out there and say yes, he'll put that person in front of you who might have struggled with infertility like my wife and I did, or might have struggled with addiction like I did, or might have suffered with depression, which I have and do sometimes. All those things, God will use them. He's looking for those that are willing to be a vessel, because I do believe he calls us his co-workers. So he allows us to work, these broken, flawed people like me and you, to work alongside a perfect God to change people's lives. What a blessing that is.
Kind of tell us what you're doing, what's going on. I mean, I know you have a lot of stuff always going on, but
Sure.
what's going on right now you're the most passionate about?
Man, that's a great question. I'll just give you a little rundown of where we are
much
as a
time as you
ministry. So we have 26 recovery homes across 12 cities and 6 states now, about 215 residents that are going through this 18-month journey of recovery and sobriety and rebuilding their life. And that's kind of the classic historic program that we've built at Hope is Alive over the past 11 years. We have an offshoot of support groups for loved ones of addicts and alcoholics. There's over 60 of those now. Over 800 men and women, moms and dads, uncles and aunts, grandparents attend every single month for free all across the country. Recently we started working with schools, Christian and public schools, helping them to provide like a relational awareness and prevention program for specifically high schools. But the most passionate thing is probably our newest adventure. It's called the Healing Center, and it is a residential recovery center right outside of Oklahoma City. It opens February the 3rd, 2025. It's a beautiful 75-acre property that we are building over 80,000 square foot of buildings on. It will really become kind of the hub of all the things that we do at Hope is Alive. It'll be a 45-day inpatient residential recovery center, like I said, for men and eventually for women. So a lot cooking at Hope is Alive. No shortage of things to do, that's for sure, because there's a lot of lives to be changed and impacted. And I mean, God's called us to it, and our tank's pretty full, and we got a lot of mileage left to go.
I'm sitting here listening to him, and the whole time I'm thinking, yesterday I filmed like 3 TikTok videos, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. I kind of text myself, "Good job today, Brad. Good job."
That's awesome.
And this cat just lays all that on us. What do you think which I know you're a huge supporter of anybody that helps anybody.
Absolutely.
What kind of differentiates Hope is Alive from other programs?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
know you got started with a different program before you
That's right.
founded this.
I mean, just like you in your background, you know that people make the difference, right? It's all about the people. So it's all about the culture, because people are culture carriers. And so I think if you walk into a Hope is Alive house, you walk into a Finding Hope support group, you walk into a Hope is Alive event or the Healing Center or the thrift store, like you're going to feel a vibe. Culture is a vibe. It's the vibe of the people that are instilling the hope, that are speaking the language. But for us, I think the biggest differentiating factor is our people have walked through our program. 75% of our employees, we have over 80 employees now, which is mind-blowing, have come through one version of our program, whether it's the homes or the support groups. And so I like to say they bleed HIA red. I mean, they've got the culture. They've walked through it. So they're extra passionate. They're leaning in to try to help you because they know somebody helped them. And so what separates us, I believe, is culture. It goes across every program that we have. It's the people, it's the language, it's the excellence that we drive ourselves to. It's the fact that we're willing to take feedback, that we're willing to get corrected, that we're willing to do anything short of sin to help change somebody's life. Like that's always been the ethos. It's kind of a forward lean. I'm even doing it right now. It's just kind of who we are, and the people make the difference.
Wow. I tell you, I never told you this, but a couple of years back, I went and spoke at one of the Sunday night events.
Yeah.
And I kind of was preparing myself to walk into a, and I'm not judging. I never try to judge. I observe a lot. I love
Mm-hmm.
observing, but I kind of was ready to go into this place, and I was going to go in front of, these are guys that are trying to put their lives back together. These are guys that maybe don't have jobs. These are guys that are, alienated from their families, whatever. So I'm kind of bracing myself and getting my psyche ready to go into this room of people that were pretty downtrodden,
Yeah. Yeah.
Bro, I went
No.
in there and I'm talking about the people in the
Oh yeah,
program.
I know. I believe it.
Oh my gosh, they were high-fiving and loving, and they were doing praise reports for the month,
Yes.
and
Come on.
I mean, I was like, so I had kind of had my speech ready, and I'm eating with everybody, and I'm like, I need to step this deal up, bro. These cats got more energy than the
Yeah.
speaker.
Yeah.
The praise and worship. Anyway, just a
It
little
should be a
feedback.
culture of celebration. That's what we've always tried. I mean, we're living, breathing, walking, talking miracles.
Amen.
Everybody, me and you, and every single person in those homes. So shouldn't we have an attitude of gratitude? Shouldn't we be a celebratory lot? Shouldn't we be positive and hopeful and, accomplishing goals and high-fiving people and bragging on bros and shouting out sisses? Of course we should be. And so we instill that culture that it's not oh, woe is me, victim mentality, the world's against me, I've done all this stuff wrong. No, 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 no. You're breathing today, my friend. You've got a second chance at life. You were once dead in sin. You're alive in Christ. Like, that's worth celebrating because the rest of your days are the best of your days. And so, we just believe that, and we try to, infuse that into every single person that comes into the program. And over time, this, like consistency over time builds that culture, and it overflows, it cascades into everything that you're doing. But just like the 3 TikTok videos, I mean, you start somewhere, you build it, you build it, you build it, you build it, you take a few days off, and you start building and building, and that over 10 or 11 years builds some great things, all to the glory of God and through a lot of amazing people.
I was telling you, when I went through my job transition, I started reaching out to people, God said, tell them what happened. And I was really, it was really kind of gratifying that either people had been there or there wasn't one person that said I didn't want to help.
Framing everything around a worst or a negative or a bad situation or a bad outcome. And I want to tell this story. I want you to think about, if you're listening or watching, to start thinking about and reframing every situation. What's the best thing that can happen out of this situation? Because what I've learned through my short time on this earth, through a lot of peaks and valleys, is that God is a good Father. He turns things to good. He's not confused. Nothing surprises him. He knows the beginning from the end. He knows what we're about to walk into, and he will turn it all into good. So the story goes, I went to treatment for 90 days for a drug addiction. They saw something in me, so when I left, they called me and they asked me to come back, and not just to be a staff member, but to run a treatment center at 6 months sober. Okay, that's insane. It's so stupid, okay? But that's what happened. So there I am, like 28 years old, 6 months sober, leading a staff of counselors that average 20 years of sobriety, much less like their counseling experience. I'm trying to lead this group, but God was not surprised. He had me there for a reason. Well, not surprisingly, though, 9 months later, they walked in and they fired me. I was not expecting it, not anticipating it, certainly not wanting it. I had given my whole short little sobriety life to this new job. I'd moved down there. I was all in on this job. I told the whole world. I was humiliated. I was so humiliated and embarrassed.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do. But what happened is God used that next 6 months of my life when I found myself 30 years old, a recovering drug addict, bald, unemployed, living with my parents, right? A really great resume of life. That little 6 month period of my life, God used it. I was able to learn that I needed some more humility. I was able to learn that there was a lot of things I didn't know. And God began to put this vision in me for what would become Hope is Alive. And because I got let go unexpectedly, I was able to have the opportunity to step back from life for just a few months, which is such a blessing to be able to have as an adult, to have any time off and as an adult. You know what I'm saying? It's like such a weird anomaly kind of thing. To be able to say, God, what are you really calling me into? So I hope I'm speaking to somebody right now that if you're in a place where you weren't expecting it, that you didn't plan on it, that it wasn't scheduled, it wasn't in your 5 or 10 year plan, hey, God's got you. He's not surprised. This isn't some big, alarming mistake he made. He knows exactly where you are. He knows exactly what's ahead. Just keep taking step after step after step. I'm so glad that I went through that. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed, and I had a lot of wounds that I had to heal from it. But God used it in such a mighty way, and I was able to clarify the calling and say, no, this is the route that God has me on, and able to step into that with Hope is Alive, and kind of the rest is history, and God's blessed it in a great way. I know.
And
That's why I told you.
My story
let me tell it on camera,
me.
because it's.
I'm talking about the 6-month deal.
Yeah.
The whole regrouping thing, the journey that I'm on. I don't know what the outcome looks like, but it has given me. If I had not been put in this situation by somebody saying they're going another direction, I feel like God. I don't feel like God does bad things to me. Okay. But I do feel like sometimes he allows certain things to happen to me that causes me to go into the directions he wanted me to go. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So I had this on my heart about helping more people, social media. I didn't know what it looked like, keynote speaking, whatever. I had this on my heart for some time, and now I know that was God. And so I feel like like you were saying, the whole 6-month deal and regrouping, and I've had time to think. And, I was telling Lance earlier too, I had another daughter who still works at the place that I worked. And there's like, how's your dad? And she's 26. She goes, in my first life, he's my dad. This is the first time in 26 years he's my dad. I had a pool party for some of my nieces and nephews who were at my house, and I started feeling a little guilty about it, because you have a little downtime, and God was, I've never heard an audible word from God, but he was like, hey, Brad, when's the last time you had a month off in the middle of summer?
That's right.
It was 47 years. Because I started working, I was 15 and a half. And when you're younger, when you hit summer, you got to bank, because you got to make enough money to make it through the school year,
Right.
And so I was like, okay, Brad, stop looking at this deal. These cousins of yours and family, and we're having a blast. I'm in the show The Chosen. The apostles keep trying to push Jesus to move, and he says it several times throughout the series. He goes, we're right where we're supposed to be. If you could go back to the 16-year-old Lance, what would you tell him?
I would say, go do it, and go do it bigger and harder, and no regrets. And I say that understanding that I impacted and devastated a lot of lives and hurt a lot of people, but I also know that God's used me to touch thousands of people. And so I don't think I get there without going through the pain and the heartache of it. And so I would say, go do your deal, go be who you are, and enjoy it. I probably would enjoy it a little bit more, because I don't think I knew I only had 2 years left of full freedom, at least as far as my story goes. But I just think I've thought a lot about this and listened to a lot of podcasts, and I think I'm in the camp of no regrets. I wouldn't do any of it differently.
I wouldn't either. The only thing I would have done different with my homeless journey and all that was, kind of what I put the hurt.
Yeah,
I put
absolutely.
my mom through, and the time I wasted.
But I know that I've given my mom and my dad tenfold in blessings.
Amen.
God has, not me. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
In blessings than I did pain. And so I think that, life is long. It feels short, but it's long. Like, we've got a long time to make up for mistakes. God's so good. His mercies are new every morning. A lot of grace. And so I think we've got time to make good on those things. And good overshadows bad really quickly. And so I really believe that, hey, I'm thankful for what I went through, and thankful for what it did for me and who it made me into, and how God has been able to turn it on its head to help a lot of folks. So.
If I would have gotten out of my own way and thought bigger, I probably could have even done, and I'm reminded of that in this journey, because I'm still the operational guy and provider of the family. So I'll get into these conversations with my wife. Okay, so what's the bills, and what do we got to do? And when this happens. Okay, so I need to make that. She goes, okay, so you're going to make this. I'm like, yeah. She goes, okay, what's God doing? I'm like, bro, don't serve my words back to me. They don't taste as good on the way back in. But it does make me think about, because you get into that deal, and really it should be, this is what I'm laying on the altar,
Yeah.
God, and that this is what we're headed. This is what we need.
It's the more you have, the harder it is to live in faith. The more you have, the harder it is to take a risk, because you feel this weird natural protection, especially as men, as husbands, as fathers. Like, how do we protect this thing that we think we've built, but God's built it all on the backs of faith and his mercy. And so that's kind of where I am today. It's like, Hope is Alive has grown. And so now how do you protect it? No. Like, actually, how do you push it to take even more risk, to help even more people, to go even further, even faster? And I think that's a challenge of any leader that's been a part of something that's grown and built. And that's kind of why the Healing Center for us is this big next kind of iteration, tipping point moment in the life of our ministry, because we feel like, hey, the work's not done, and you almost have to infuse something new into your professional and your personal life to put you back on that forward lean of faith, right? Otherwise, you'll set back in your comfort zone.
Oh, yeah.
The world's naturally built to just make you, fat and happy and easy and lazy and complacent and life is good. And I'll just sit here and compare myself as I scroll on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is. But I think like we move the needle when we lean forward with faith and we take those risks. And so I'm preaching to myself, by the way, right now.
No, me too. Yeah,
but that's where God's shown up the most in my life. So why would I not continue to live that way? Well, it's because the world's trained me to live in a protective mechanism of fear mindset. So I got to break through that and live with this forward lean of faith, and I believe that'll help us to continue to break through in every area of life.
I bring up The Chosen again.
Come on.
So there's an interview that he does, the lead actor that played Jesus, and it was an amazing moment. Anyway, this lady asks him, he's been doing this series 8 years or whatever. He says, hey, when you get to heaven, what do you ask Jesus? I'm going to ask you that. Have you ever thought about that? Like, when you get there and you're going there, you got a fast pass. I can just see it right now. What do you say when you get I don't know that I can talk, but I'll probably be so overwhelmed. But
I feel like I know what he said.
Yeah, you did.
And so it's a form of that. But I mean, I've always said to people, you're going to get there and he's going to say, what did you do with what I gave you? And so I think my question to him would be, how did I do with what you gave me? And I think it's a real emotional question to think about. But with the gifts and talents and all those things, but with the story, with the time, with the experience of mentors, like, what did you do with what I gave you?
We have been given a tremendous amount of gifts as far as, ability to connect with people, loving people, intelligence, that's interesting. When I get there, he's going to be like, hey, I pretty well filled your cart, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
How did I do with what you have given me? How did I do with?
Can't take it with you.
No.
In any area, money, time, energy, talents, any of that. And so, leave it all in the field.
Yeah, I've had that revelation. I've spoken at a couple of deals and introduced people not quite as eloquently as I introduced you today, but and I've spoke at a couple of you, and it started to hit me that when I got up and spoke about these people, there was no like PowerPoint of their house or their car.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
That's a good word.
All
Absolutely.
I said was the people that they had helped in their lives, and the time that they had spent with people.
That's right.
And it hit me, and it was like, okay, when this deal's over, all they're going to remember is the time I spent with people, loving on people, and how did I help them?
Yeah.
So if I know that's all they're going to remember me for, then why? And I just keep preaching to myself, why would I not do more of that now?
That's a good word. I mean, I was at a funeral Thursday or something last week. It's 3 speakers and a slideshow. That's basically what you got, right?
Yeah.
You got 3 people maybe speaking on you and a slideshow of basically pictures of you with your kids. So, I mean, if you ever think about it like that, like my funeral is a song or two worth of pictures with my family and 3 people speaking on my behalf. And do I give them something to talk about? Do I give them something to really speak about? And so it's an interesting thing to think about. Funerals do that to me. I think about legacy and all that a lot. And
me too.
Maybe because I'm living in my dad's legacy. My dad was such an influential person in my life and laid the groundwork of ministry and in our family, and so did my grandfather. And he came from nothing, ran the streets of Tulsa, but but never drank, never drugged, just gave his life to the Lord at 16 and was sold out and preached the gospel for 40 years. And, I feel like, I'm in the family business. And so carrying on that legacy is really important to me. And I hope that if and when that funeral comes, when it comes, that they'll be able to say that I carried on that legacy of life change. But it's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
What will they say at your funeral?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And what will you be remembered for? And another thing for me too is, my parents did as good as they could do with what they were given. They were not wealthy people. They were middle-class type people. But my a little bit of materialistic things is I just want to be able to at least provide opportunities for my kids.
That's right.
But later on, when I got in life, I realized too that I had these amazing words, very eloquent, that can come out of my mouth, but my actions did not match up to those.
Mm-hmm.
And so I noticed that that when I was in that phase where my actions were not meeting up, I didn't realize it until I was sober for a couple of years. And then I looked back on it that all my kids would, if they ever got into a situation or ever needed advice, ask my wife. And I did not realize it until I was sober. And then they started calling me.
Wow, what a word.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because now I'm a person that they see value. I mean, and it's not like they didn't love me, but now they saw a person that his actions are matching up with his words.
Yes.
And now they're like, no, I need to, talk to you. And here I thought too, all of those things in my life that I had gone through, he was like, just brace me for this moment to lead, hundreds and hundreds of salespeople in this multi-billion-dollar company. And I had this, once I sobered up, I had this epiphany that my son was at OSU doing microbiology. I don't know where these kids get this stuff. Biochemistry, microbiology. Bro, I was lucky to do senior math in high school.
Oh, man.
So anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
But he was calling me on a regular basis, and God was just giving me words throughout my life of strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe God, I went through that wasn't for, the mission of the world. Maybe it was for the mission of my family.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was kind of an eye-opening deal to me, that those things could not just be used. But that's really what came out of it is I became a resource to them. And I realized that this gives me an opportunity. Some of that stuff he put me through gave me an opportunity. Like my son would call me freaking out about something that was going on, a bad grade at college or OSU or something like that. I'm like, Thomas, okay, just slow down, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You're 24.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was eating out of a dumpster at 24.
Yeah.
Now let's look and see how we're doing.
That's great. But you're willing to share it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good word for
absolutely.
those that are listening. I think sharing those vulnerabilities, those pain points, those valleys with your kids at the right time when they're age appropriate. I think that's powerful. I think we've come from a generation that hid everything underneath the table, swept it underneath the rug. We didn't really talk about those character defects. We didn't really talk a lot about, the mistakes that we made. And now we're kind of emerging into a new society, a new generation where everything's kind of out there on the table. And I think, it's a balance of those two. Yeah. But I do think our kids need to see and hear and even watch us take risks and fail or struggle or not always hit it out of the park, and talk about how they tried, how they prepared, but they didn't quite do it the right way. And I think that helps kind of take the pressure out of children who are trying to succeed, trying to please mom and dad, and opens the door for real conversations.
Absolutely.
What's the best thing that we had that we can pass on to our kids? Experience, right? It's the wisdom of the fact that we didn't do it all right, but we wish we could have done this, that, or the other thing. Well, until you show them that you're fallible, you can't have that conversation. So my guess is that they saw, hey, he's human, and I can relate to him now, and that opened up doors for you to be able to speak into.
After he got out of college, he comes back and he goes, because I was telling him these stories and all that. And he graduates from college. He comes over to my house. He goes, Dad, I Googled you. I'm like, bro, why would you Google me? Don't Google me. He goes, that really happened to you? And I'm like, yeah,
wow.
I wasn't just making that stuff up. But there was something.
Dad, I Googled you. That's funny.
Dad, I Googled you. And bro, nothing will make your face, nothing will take the blood out of your face. No, I'm just kidding.
That's funny.
But it was kind of an eye-opening deal. So with your amazing children, and I thought about this too, and I've really been praying about this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, and I thank you again that you're here.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking about things that people ask me, what's like, and then I started thinking more about my life. What's one lesson besides you want all your kids to have a relationship with Jesus Christ? What's another lesson you would say that they walk away from you being their parent?
Resiliency. It's probably the number one thing for my wife and I. I think we've developed through what God has allowed us to walk through a high level of resiliency and to be able to not like always be on top or not always like, take the hit to take it, but then to get back up and to continue to fight and to know that we have a higher purpose and a higher calling. And so no matter what my kids end up doing or want to do, I want them to have ingrained in them a level of resiliency that's strong. We call it in the program having some bounce back. Do you have that bounce back? Can you get back up? Sometimes it takes you a little while to get back up off the floor because life hits, money hits, relationship hits, legal issues. I mean, all the things that sickness is there. But do you have that grit, that resiliency to get up and keep fighting and chasing after what God puts on your life? I think more than anything, would I love a football player on Friday nights? Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that. But more than anything, I want them to be resilient in whatever they choose to do.
The discipline,
Mm-hmm.
which is a form of resiliency. You got to be disciplined to be resilient. But if they're disciplined, a lot of times in life, just being disciplined in your relationship with God, discipline in your how you take care for your house, discipline in your
That's a really good
condition.
word.
Yeah. If I feel, which I was not very disciplined and pretty selfish, or I wouldn't have put myself in those positions.
Do you feel like that's a skill that you have developed though over time?
Developed, yes.
Yeah. That's interesting that's the one you would pass down because I know I'm resilient, so I want my kids to have that. I know I'm not very disciplined though.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the one I should want them to have is kind of the character defect that I don't have or that I do have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to give you the accolade, even though you're sitting here. He has that tag, the hope dealer. And man, when I read that and then he comes in wearing the shirt, in my humble opinion, one of the greatest gifts on this earth is to give hope to somebody who is in a state of absolute hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know, like that guy that basically helped me in my life, sent my brother a ticket for a Greyhound bus ticket, bought me a cheap pair of pants, a white shirt, white tie, and white shoes. And he had no idea that was going to be the off-ramp to a better life for me. Sometimes the biggest blessings are in the smallest of things. One time I was on, for a period, I was on the board of directors for a major hospital group. And I was in this meeting, and I guess the guy sitting next to me said something to me, and I'll tell you what it is in a second. Because I'm like overwhelmed that it takes this much to run a hospital. You know what I'm saying? You're in there sure. Like you're getting exposed to this. And you just think they open the doors and throw some doctor. Anyway, and then I'm at this visionary night for a major church, and I guess I got that same look. Right? Mm. This is like a year later, and both men leaned into me and they go, "It takes a lot to save lives." Mm-hmm. So what they were talking about was a church saves lives, but they were also, they were two different people, but I connected the dots as, yes, this is a hospital, and this man leans in who does not know me, sees that I'm blown away, goes, yeah, it takes a lot to save lives.
Wow.
And then I'm at this vision night where they're talking about, raising $50 million in the next couple of years for this vision. And I'm like, and the guy leans in and goes, it takes a lot of money to save lives. Man. It takes a lot of effort to save lives. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is the part, and then I'm going to let you speak. But I'm just telling you, and Lance has no idea that I'm about to say this. God did laid this on my heart ever since I knew he was going to be here. I'll try to say this without crying. That Lance and Hope is alive. I'm just telling you straight up. There are people walking on this earth today, functioning, living people that would not be alive today. Now think about that for a second. Now, I mean, and I'm not, you might pull it back some a little bit, but I've been in that situation, and there's only a few kind of little clicks in my life. Had it not happened a different way, I wouldn't be alive. And a couple of people that reached out to me, and I really was thinking about that because I saw your post on the graduates from out of your program, and I was thinking, that's a lot of people, and there's a very good chance had Hope Alive not been there for those people, that there's a lot of not so great stories where people never get out of it. There's people that pass away from certain things. There's people that are suicide. There's all these other things, and you just never know what hope does for people, and that I believe that there are literally people walking on this earth now. How long have you been doing this?
11 years.
11 years. You cannot tell me that there's not people walking on this earth had they not gone through what you guys and your team are doing. Might not be here, might not have kids, might not have the lives that they have. So anyway, didn't mean to set you up like that. But
thank you for that.
Oh, no
thank
problem.
Thank you so much
no
for
problem.
it. And
no problem.
I
what
receive
would you like
it.
to share before?
Well, I receive it, and I thank you. I'm emotional
Have you ever
thinking
thought
about
it like that?
Yeah, I mean, behind this camera, I'm staring at one right now. Who's in this room, and so I think about what God's done, and how He's Ephesians 3:20 done exceedingly abundantly beyond all that I could have ever asked or imagined, exponentially, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over, out of a measly little drug addict's willingness to say yes. I mean, it makes no sense. And so it's only in God's economy. I mean, I am such a flawed human being. I'm dumb as a box of rocks. I don't have a whole lot of things to give, but I know that I fell in love with the addict and the addict's journey to sobriety, and that moment of life change, and like seeing their life change, and like everything else is kind of morphed off of that. And what I've learned, Brad, is what I'd say to folks as they're listening as we close is, every one of these stories, I always ask them, how did you find out about Hope is Alive? Now, part of that is the marketer in me that wants to know, right? How they found out about us. But secondly, I love to trace it back to the seed, of when God really put that bit of hope in them. And because I know what happened to me.
Yeah.
April 6, 2011. And my uncle almost threw me against the wall and said, like, today's the day that you change. And so I love to trace people back to that seed moment of like, when did it happen for you? When did you realize I needed help? And then who told you about Hope is Alive? Because then you get to see God show off. Because you start tracing back everything that happened, all the different interactions, all the different moments. And I'll close with this, because I'm literally about to go to Ferguson Subaru and film the annual commercial that we show all across Tulsa for the end of the year. Last Sunday night, I'm in Wichita, and I meet Gage. I said, Gage, how did you find out about Hope is Alive? And he said, my mom saw a Ferguson Subaru commercial and heard about Hope is Alive. I had been to 4 different places. None of them had worked. I was finally ready and willing. So my point is, it doesn't matter how far gone you are. It doesn't matter how desperate you might feel. It doesn't matter how much you think your son or your daughter will never recover ever in their lifetime. There is hope today. There is hope today. With Hope is Alive, with Jesus Christ, with any other mechanism of recovery, there is hope for you. Find the courage to reach out and ask for help. You are not too far gone. You are not disqualified. Your past only sets you up to have an incredible future. But it does take your willingness to say, I need some help. I need somebody to help me. And we at Hope is Alive would love to help. I know Brad would as well. And so if there's anybody listening, I know what I'm trying to say is this is going to be a seed moment for somebody. They'll have listened to this, and they'll think about somebody that they love that needs help. Or themselves, and they might get the courage enough to say, that's me today. And if that's you today, we'd be so honored to be able to walk this journey with you and to help you experience radical life change.
Amen. Can I tell you something? Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
I mean that.
Absolutely.
I know you're a busy guy. I think that means, generosity is not giving what you have abundance of, in my opinion. Generosity is giving me of sometimes what you're lacking. And by the way it sounds, you don't have a tremendous amount of time on your hands. And so for this time that you've shared with us, I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. We love you, and we're proud of you and excited for what's to come.
Amen. Hey, guys, this is Brad. I hope you got a half of what I got out of this podcast. I hope you watch it again. If I can do anything to be helpful, like you said, please reach out to me. This is Brad with Be Real. Go make it a great day. Thanks.